Hi there, I'm Rowan, and this is how my mother-in-law gave me divorce papers on my birthday, with a handwritten note that said, "Happy birthday, dear." I thought that was the worst of it, but it wasn't. She stripped me of everything, my marriage, my home, even my name at the foundation. And now, she's the one facing 25 years in prison. How did it all turn so fast? How far would your own family go to silence you? I woke up to the faint creak of the ceiling vent pushing out warm air. The light filtering through the linen curtains had that soft golden glow I used to love on mornings like this. My birthday? 38. In a house that once felt like mine. The room was silent. Not the kind of peaceful silence you wrap around yourself like a blanket. No, this was the kind that scratches at the back of your neck. Empty. Expectant. Silas hadn't come home last night. Again. I showered, brushed my hair, put on the navy cashmere sweater he once said brought out my eyes. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I wanted to feel human before everything fell apart. The doorbell rang just as I finished my coffee. At first I didn't move, just stared at the front door, the monogrammed M on the glass, suddenly looking like a scar. Then came the second ring, this one longer, more insistent. A young man in a blazer handed me a flat envelope. "For Mrs. Rowan Maddox," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I glanced down. The return address read, Palmer Legal Division. A bright pink sticky note was stuck to the front. "Happy birthday, dear. BB? Blythe." I opened it with shaking fingers. Divorce papers. Filed. Signed. Effective immediately. A clause circled in red. Tenant must vacate Palmer premises within 10 business days. The breath caught in my throat, sharp and metallic like biting down on tinfoil. I scanned for Silas's signature. It wasn't there. He hadn't sent them. Blythe had. For a second I just stood in the entryway, paper fluttering in my hands, the cold wind from the open door licking my legs. Then the door shut behind me with a soft click. I walked through the house, each room echoing with ghosts. The photo from our wedding in Lake Como still hung in the hallway, me in silk, him in linen, Blythe beside us like a queen blessing her new heir. It had all been hers, even him. Silas hadn't even had the decency to hand me my own undoing. My phone buzzed. I stared at the screen. Blythe, of course. "Rowan, darling," she began, her voice as sweet as spoiled cream. "Did you get my little delivery?" I said nothing. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she went on. "It's just a clean break. You never quite fit." My jaw clenched. "You're enjoying this." She laughed. "Let's not make this ugly. I've already arranged housing for you, and my lawyers made sure everything is ironed out. 10 days is generous, you know." Then she hung up. No goodbye, no explanation, just a guillotine drop in the shape of a dial tone. I sat at the kitchen island with the documents spread in front of me. The lines swam, but I didn't cry. I wouldn't give her that. Instead, I poured a glass of Cabernet, the one Silas always said was too bold for my palate. He'd never liked when I took up space. I remembered the first dinner with Blythe 16 years ago. "You wear red to a family dinner?" she'd said. Bold choice. She'd always been polite like that. Death by 1,000 manners. Now she'd drawn the final cut. But if they thought they'd broken me, they'd forgotten who I was before I became Mrs. Silas Maddox. I was still her. Somewhere under the ash. I stood, gathered the papers, and started toward Silas's study. Something on the security feed had blinked before. A shadow. A flicker. Someone had been in there. If they wanted me gone, they were going to regret what they left behind. "I wasn't leaving empty-handed," I whispered. "Not this time." I waited until the house settled into that eerie, hollow quiet that only comes at night. The kind where every floorboard feels like it's accusing you of something. I moved barefoot down the hallway, hand grazing the wall like I needed to tether myself to something real. Silas's study had been locked for weeks. He said it was Foundation Security Protocol, another line in his endless repertoire of half-truths and corporate theater. But I'd seen him hide the key once, behind a loose molding strip under the stair runner. He always underestimated me. The key still worked. The study was dim, heavy with that distinct blend of wood polish and buried secrets. I stood still, just breathing. It didn't feel like a room. It felt like a trap. The first drawer I opened held nothing but pens, paperweights, and a sleek leather-bound calendar. But tucked inside was a delivery slip. Courier log. The name leapt out at me. Clara Fink. No, it couldn't be. 6 years ago, Clara was the only one who knew I had panic attacks before press conferences. She brought me herbal tea and slipped rescue meds into my clutch during black tie galas. She shielded me from Blythe's passive-aggressive cruelty. When my father passed, she took over the foundation's gala planning while I flew home. I trusted her, like family, but it was her name, clear as day. She didn't just hand-deliver the divorce package, she signed for it. I sank into the leather chair, the betrayal slicing through me faster than the wine ever could. I had lost my assistant, my friend, and my last illusion of loyalty, all in the same breath. It was Clara. I stood up, adrenaline flooding me with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. I needed answers. In Silas's closet, behind a perfectly arranged row of Oxfords, something stuck out, barely. A scuffed leather briefcase half buried behind a box of unused ties. It wasn't his style. Silas didn't keep anything old. The lock had already been twisted open. Inside, a pile of files, yellowed tabs, copies of foundation accounts, transfers that didn't make sense, private accounts overseas, dozens of transactions flagged with red ink, and name after name, Richard Fallon's appearing again and again. There was a printed email chain. Richard questioning missing funds. The tone was urgent, alarmed. The last line before the chain cut off. This isn't a mistake, it's intentional. Tucked in the side flap was a smaller envelope with familiar handwriting. Richard's. I knew it from the annual Christmas cards he used to send handwritten for every staff member. Even me. If anything happens to me, it read, look in the vault, they won't stop. I pressed my palm against the desk. It wasn't just a falling out. He hadn't simply quit. He was trying to expose something, and someone made sure he never got the chance. It wasn't about my marriage anymore. Blythe, Silas, Clara, this went deeper than I had imagined. I took out my phone, fingers shaking, and began photographing every page. It felt like gathering firewood in the dark. When I finally closed the briefcase, I whispered, "You made the wrong enemy, Blythe." I turned to leave when my phone vibrated in my hand. Unknown number. One sentence. "Stop digging, Rowan, or you'll end up like him." I froze. My reflection in the dark screen looked unfamiliar, like someone I used to be, buried under years of silence. They killed Richard. And now they're watching me. The key clicked in the lock. I hadn't even stepped fully into the apartment when I heard his voice. "Nice place. A little small for someone used to marble floors and wine cellars." Silas. Sitting on my couch like he still had the right to breathe my air. I didn't answer, just shut the door behind me and crossed my arms. He stood, dusted off invisible lint from his sleeve. "We should talk. No lawyers, just us." "There's no us left to talk about," I said, walking past him. "If you've come to gloat, do it fast." He followed, undeterred. "You always assume the worst." I turned, facing him fully. "You had your mother serve me divorce papers on my birthday. If that's not the worst, I'm terrified to ask what comes next." He reached into his bag and slid a file across the counter. "This." I flipped it open and felt my stomach twist. Legal documents, transfer of ownership, my shares, gone. "You signed them weeks ago," he said, barely meeting my eyes. "No, I didn't." My voice was razor thin. He shrugged. "Funny, your signature's right there." It was close, scarily close, but not mine, and I knew exactly who had the resources to fake it this well. Blythe's team. High-end legal forgery disguised as oversight. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" I asked, voice steady, but my pulse deafening. He leaned against the counter. "I hoped you'd be smart enough not to fight it." I laughed, dry, bitter. "You're stealing my work, my legacy, and you think I won't fight?" That's when his tone shifted, colder, rehearsed. "I've also had some concerns," he said, fishing out a second envelope, "about your emotional state." I didn't touch it. "Over the last year, you've had episodes," he continued, like he was reading a damn script. "Anxiety, paranoia, a few credible accounts. Dr. Corman has started documenting, for your own good." "For my own good?" I repeated, stunned. "You're trying to have me declared unstable." "If you drag this through court, he said, tilting his head. You won't win. But if you do, they'll say you're unfit. You'll be the crazy ex-wife trying to take down the family. The rage came fast, hot, wild, but I held it. Instead of screaming, I walked calmly to the drawer and pulled out my phone. Hit record. Set it quietly on the counter. You've thought of everything, I said evenly. I learned from the best. He smirked. I leaned closer. If you go through with this, if you even breathe that psychiatrist's name in court, I will burn the foundation to the ground. His smile twitched. For a second, the facade cracked. You're bluffing, he said, too quickly. Try me. We stood in silence. An invisible war fought in inches and restraint. He blinked first. He grabbed the documents, stuffed them into his bag. Think about what you're doing, Rowan. You're spiraling. Get out of my apartment. His footsteps echoed down the hall. Door slammed. I stopped the recording. My hands shook, but not from fear, from control. I was done playing victim. Just as I reached for my wine glass, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, one message. We should talk. I have information. Marin. Marin, Blythe's former assistant, gone without a trace 2 years ago. I stared at the screen, jaw clenched. She helped bury Richard. Now she wants to talk. Why now? The envelope was ivory, embossed. My name spelled in ink so rich it bled slightly into the paper. Formal, rehearsed elegance masking something rotten underneath. A family dinner. Not a suggestion, not a request, an expectation. I showed up 23 minutes late, alone. The table was already set, wine poured, seats occupied. Blythe smiled as if my lateness had been choreographed. We were just waiting on our guest of honor. No one rose, not even Silas. Marin avoided my eyes. Calder stared at his plate like it might tell him how to survive the evening. And Blythe? She swirled her wine like a weapon. The conversation tiptoed between bland updates and backhanded praise. Blythe, of course, was at the helm. You know, it's incredible what people will do for opportunity, she mused, eyes flicking to Marin, like accepting a scholarship that was never actually awarded. Marin's fork paused midair. Blythe continued without missing a beat. Or hiding infidelities behind quarterly retreats. I do hope that hotel in Austin refunded you, Silas. He flinched. Family secrets, she said softly, aren't meant for strangers, but sometimes even blood can stain. Her words landed like needles, sharp, deliberate. The message was clear. She knew everything, and she'd use it if crossed. I could feel it building beneath my skin. That scream of injustice I hadn't let out since the papers arrived. But I stayed quiet, still, watching her, because fear makes you sloppy, and I couldn't afford to be sloppy. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. I rolled over, squinting at the flood of notifications. Private audio, online, everywhere. A grainy voice memo was making the rounds. Blythe saying coolly, "Everyone has a price, even blood." There was no context, no defense. The press didn't need one. It was scandal on a silver platter. By noon, Palmer Foundation's inbox was drowning in PR fire, and we hadn't even had our coffee yet. At the estate, Calder apparently confronted her. He lasted 6 minutes. Marin? Silent, as if her shame had welded her tongue to her throat. I wasn't so generous. By nightfall, I was planting devices, my own version of truth insurance. If Blythe wanted war, I'd document every damn move. But war was noisy. This needed to be quiet. 2 years ago, I'd installed a hidden cam in my foundation office, long before the divorce. Paranoia, they'd said. Overcautious. Now, prophetic. I found the footage, a clip from exactly 4 weeks ago. Clara, my former assistant, my almost sister, sliding an envelope across my desk to a man in a navy suit I didn't recognize, but I didn't need to. He wore Blythe's brand of menace. I paused the video, rewound, watched again. She looked nervous, not guilty, nervous, and that made it worse, because it meant she still had a conscience. And she sold me out anyway. She didn't just weaponize their secrets, she made them lie for her. The knock came just after midnight, not frantic, not desperate, just steady. I stood behind the door for a full 30 seconds before opening it, and there she was. Marin. Her hair was pulled back like she hadn't touched it in days. She looked smaller than I remembered, but her eyes, still sharp, still haunted. Don't slam it, she whispered. Just let me talk. I didn't invite her in. I stepped aside. She entered without asking, clutching a satchel like it carried the weight of her shame. I know I don't deserve this, she said, but I couldn't keep pretending. Not after what she did to you. I crossed my arms. She's done a lot. Be specific. She sat on the edge of my couch, eyes flicking toward the window like someone might be watching. Maybe they were. Richard came to me 2 days before he died. I didn't breathe. He said the foundation's books were being doctored, that someone was using shell accounts to bury funds, money that didn't match board approvals. He was scared. And you said nothing. Marin looked down. She offered me a scholarship grant, said I'd earned it, but it came with a stipulation. Don't mention Richard's claims. Don't dig. Don't ask. Blood money. I was 23, broke, trying to survive. I told myself it was just paperwork, just rumors. But then he died, and I stayed quiet. The room felt like it tilted slightly. I steadied myself on the kitchen island. I'm not here to beg for forgiveness, she added. I'm here because I want to help. I can't fix what I did, but I can help you end her. I watched her closely. What changed? She turned on me, Marin said flatly, the second I wasn't useful anymore. That sounded like Blythe. We talked for hours. Plans formed like bricks stacking slowly into something that resembled justice. She had names, files, breadcrumbs. I had protection, a platform, and enough rage to fuel us both. The next morning, I walked into the Palmer Foundation boardroom without an invite. Silas was there, pretending I didn't exist. Blythe sat at the head, flanked by her allies in suits that reeked of complacency. I didn't raise my voice. Consider this a courtesy, I said. The next time you push me, I won't speak behind closed doors. I'll speak into microphones. Is that a threat? One of the board members muttered. No, I replied. That's me being polite. You haven't seen me when I'm not. Blythe didn't flinch, just offered that signature tight-lipped smile, the one that meant she was already preparing a counterattack. But I saw it, the flicker behind her eyes. Not fear, but calculation. And that meant I'd finally become a variable she couldn't fully control. That night, Marin met me in the car outside her old apartment. She handed me a small flash drive. Her hand trembled. I was supposed to destroy this, she said. I couldn't. I didn't wait. Back at my place, I plugged it into my laptop. The screen flickered, then audio. Richard's voice, calm, tired, recorded in a quiet room. If you're hearing this, he said, it's because I didn't survive the truth. My breath caught. He went on, detailing anomalies in the foundation's finances, pointing to specific dates and names. There was fear in his tone, but something else too. Hope that someone might listen. That someone was me. And just like that, Richard was alive again. In truth, in voice, and in the war I was about to fight. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not Calder. He stood at my door like someone who'd accidentally wandered off the edge of a map. Disheveled, hoodie pulled over his head, a paper bag in one hand, and something unreadable in his expression. You need to hear something, he said, from our father's study. I didn't invite him in. He walked past me anyway. Inside, he didn't waste time. I know I've been out of all this, but I found something it changes things. He pulled out a mini tape recorder, the kind you forgot existed until you saw it again. Old, clunky, unassuming. He clicked play. Richard's voice filled the room, static-lined but unmistakable. If this ever reaches the light, it means I didn't make it. I tried to warn them. I told Everett. I told Blythe I wouldn't go along with it anymore. And now I'm being watched. Calder fast-forwarded. Richard spoke names, dates, accounts. Then in a whisper, she's willing to ruin bloodlines to protect this. If anything happens to me, start with the land. The deed proves it. I sat frozen. That voice had been silent for over a decade. But in that moment, Richard was in my living room, bleeding truth. Calder looked at me. There's more. We drove across town, neither of us speaking. When we reached Everett's home, Calder led me to his father's old cabinet. Bottom drawer, false back. And there it was, an envelope yellowed by time. Inside, a land deed dated 22 years ago. It listed Richard Fallon, not Everett, not Blythe, as the majority landholder of the property that launched Palmer Foundation's first investment arm. And just like that, the mythology unraveled. Richard hadn't just worked there, he built the base they'd buried him under. I photocopied everything, every brittle page, every ink-smudged signature. That night, I sent the entire file, under a private encrypted alias, to a contact I trusted at the state attorney's office. And then, I sent a message to Silas. If your mother keeps pushing, she'll lose more than the foundation. She'll lose you. I didn't expect a reply. I didn't need one. But later, as I stepped onto my porch, my car alarm shrieked. The windshield was cracked down the center like a lightning bolt. On the ground lay a brick, taped to it, a note written in thick black marker. Dig too deep and you'll end up next to him. No name, no signature, just threat. I didn't panic. I didn't call the police. I walked inside, locked the doors, pulled out my backup USB, and dialed Marin. It's time, I told her. I looked out the window, the porch light casting long shadows across the brick. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of her. Not of the truth. I'd been to the foundation gala a dozen times before, but never like this. The invitations arrived dressed in ivory cardstock and gold embossing, claiming another year of celebration. This time, Calder and Marin made sure mine reached me. You should be seen, Calder had said, especially tonight. I walked in wearing black silk and Richard's lapel pin, the one he always wore when he faced a fight. The air shimmered with perfume, polished ambition, and tightly wrapped secrets. Laughter too loud, eyes too quick. It was always a performance here, but this time I had the script. Blythe stood on stage under chandeliers and crafted applause, commanding attention with every calculated word. This year, she declared, we expanded our commitment to ethical stewardship and community investment, values my late husband and I built this legacy on. Liar. I stayed in the shadows, behind gilded columns and trays of caviar, steadying my breath. I wasn't here for spectacle. I was here for closure, not revenge, a reckoning. I scanned the room, Silas standing stiff near the bar, Calder nodding subtly from a corner, Marin by the side exit. Everyone in position, everyone watching, and then it began. Sparks, a flicker in the lights, the whine of something short-circuiting, then smoke curled from the lower stage panels, gasps, shouts. The crowd surged toward the exits in a wave of perfume and panic. But I didn't move. Neither did Blythe. That's when I saw her. Eyes scanning the chaos, calm beneath the chaos. Her hand brushed the arm of a security aide. A signal? No doubt. The fire was a distraction. She knew this moment was coming. Just as the smoke thinned and the sprinklers stopped, 3 men in dark suits entered the room, followed by 2 uniformed officers. Silence cracked across the marble floor as if the entire room had been slapped. They didn't shout. They didn't rush. One approached the podium, badge lifted. Blythe Maddox, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, and misuse of charitable funds. You have the right to remain silent. The room froze. Forks hung in midair. Glasses stopped halfway to lips. Blythe's face didn't change. Not at first. She kept her chin high, her hands still. Then she looked for Silas, and something broke. He didn't meet her gaze. He stepped back. That was the real blow. She tried to whisper to him. Something about it being a misunderstanding, about protecting the family, but no one listened. As they cuffed her, she turned and met my eyes. You think this is over? She hissed, her voice low, lethal. No, I said, but it's finally started. She didn't flinch, but her hands were trembling, the cameras clicked. The press, somehow already there, recorded every step. A dynasty cracking under crystal lights. As Blythe disappeared down the hallway in silver cuffs, the room remained still. And for the first time in years, I wasn't the one leaving in shame. By the time I got home from the gala, the night was already echoing through every major network. Blythe's name scrolled across news tickers like a curse lifted. Footage of her being escorted out in cuffs played on repeat, sound bites and speculation trailing behind like blood in the water. I didn't change out of my dress. I didn't sit. I stood by the window, arms crossed, watching silence reclaim the night. Silas had gone radio silent. No texts, no calls. Marin messaged, "You did it." No, not yet. Not until Richard's name came clean. The doorbell rang just after 9 a.m. A man stood there in a charcoal gray suit, holding a weathered leather folder. "Rowan Maddox?" he asked, formal, polite. "My name is Quinn. I'm an attorney. I was personal counsel to Richard Fallon." My breath snagged in my throat. I was instructed to hold this until Blythe Maddox was no longer in power. Her arrest meets that condition. He handed me the folder without flourish, nodded once, and left without waiting for thanks. Inside was a sealed envelope. My name was handwritten in familiar cursive. I sat down, fingers trembling, and opened it. The letter was dated 15 years ago. Richard's voice lived in every line. He wrote about the financial discrepancies he uncovered, the threats Blythe made behind boardroom doors and cocktail smiles, how Silas had been dragged into it, manipulated and weaponized, how Everett stood by silently, ashamed but complicit by omission. "If you're reading this, then she has finally paid the price," he wrote. "I only regret I won't see it." He apologized for not telling me sooner, for letting me walk blind into a world of sharks. "She feared you, Rowan. That's why she moved fast the day I died." My hands shook too hard to turn the next page, so I let it fall. A manila sleeve was tucked behind the letter. Inside, printed emails, handwritten ledger notes, transcripts from internal meetings. At the very bottom, an old USB, labeled in black ink, "Insurance." I already knew what I had. Proof, not hearsay, not implication, evidence. I called the state attorney's office from a blocked number, told them where to find the same package. Quinn had made copies. He'd prepared for every outcome, every delay. Richard had trusted the right person, but even with truth on paper, my heart wasn't done burning. I needed something more human than legal files. I drove to Everett's cottage just past dusk, the air already falling into autumn's hush. He opened the door slowly, grief carved into every line on his face. I didn't say anything, just held out Richard's cufflinks, polished silver, edges smooth from decades of use. Everett took them in both hands like they were relics. "I let it happen," he whispered. "I knew what she was capable of. I just didn't stop her." "I know," I said, "but now we do." He looked up with eyes rimmed red. "You did what none of us had the spine to finish." I didn't cry. I didn't gloat. I simply stood, steady, because Richard no longer could. And I wasn't done. Not until Richard's name was cleared, in public and in full. The headlines said it all. Blythe Maddox found guilty on all counts. Every anchor's voice laced with disbelief as the woman who once commanded a city's philanthropy scene was reduced to an orange jumpsuit and shackled wrists. I didn't attend the sentencing in person. I didn't need to. I'd already stood face to face with the monster, and silence had been louder than any gavel. But I watched. I listened. The board of the Palmer Foundation voted unanimously to strip her name from every building, every document, every ounce of legacy she once poisoned. Her portraits were taken down within hours. What remained was ash and truth. That same afternoon, I gave a statement outside the courthouse. I didn't speak as a victim. I spoke as a witness to survival. Richard Fallon was not a criminal. He was a whistleblower. And now, thanks to his courage and those who carried it forward, his name will not only be cleared, it will live again. We're launching the Fallon Initiative, a nonprofit committed to protecting those who dare to tell the truth. Applause wasn't what moved me. What did? Was the stillness that followed. Like the city was finally listening. Silas wasn't there. Rumors circled that he'd left the country, fled to Zurich, or maybe London. Cowards didn't like courts. Everett met me outside the courthouse 2 days later. He didn't speak for a long time, just stood with his hand on the railing, watching traffic pass like it could undo his decades of silence. "It should have been me decades ago," he finally said. I handed him a copy of the letter Richard had written, the original left at his grave days earlier. Everett's hands shook as he took it. He whispered, "Thank you for doing what none of us had the spine to finish." Calder showed up too, quiet but present. At one point, he pulled me aside, his usual sarcasm gone. "You didn't just survive her. You saved us all." And still, peace didn't arrive in one neat wave. It came in fragments. I visited Richard's grave alone, left his letter beneath the marble etched with his name. You were right, I said aloud. But justice took too long. There were no tears left to give. Just truth. I thought about everything I'd lost. My marriage, my career, my illusions, and everything I'd gained. Control, clarity, freedom from pretending. Later that week, Marin and I had coffee at a downtown cafe. We both lost parts of ourselves in that house, she said, turning her mug slowly. Time to rebuild. I nodded. But this time, without hiding. Boxes lined my townhouse floors. I wasn't rushing, but I was ready. I'd received an offer from a nonprofit in Seattle. A new beginning. Not a promise, not an escape, just possibility. That was enough. My children, too young to know the full war, were staying with my sister in Colorado. They asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. So I left behind an envelope, a photo of the family before the fall, and my wedding ring. On the front, I wrote, "For when they ask. And maybe someday I'll tell them everything. Or maybe they'll find the truth the way I did, bit by brutal bit." But today I stood on the threshold, sun warming my shoulders as I closed the door behind me. The past is not a place I live anymore, but I'll carry its echoes, quiet and no longer heavy. There's something about survival that people often misunderstand. It's not just about getting through. It's about who you become on the other side. I learned that the hard way. I lost my marriage, my identity, nearly my sanity. But I found truth. I found strength. And above all, I found me. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Never let someone else's silence bury your voice. Speak up, even if it shakes. Especially when it shakes. Because the moment you stop fearing the truth, you become unstoppable. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Or had to rebuild from something that broke you? Drop a comment and share your story, or just type 1 if this video touched something in you. Let me know where you're watching from too. I read every comment. And hey, if this video made you feel something, or even just made you think, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. There are more stories to come, raw, real, and right from the heart.